So we are back with return guest David Wolf. David has over 30 years experience as a media executive, music producer, entrepreneur, and he is building a company that serves audiences, content creators, publishers, producers, and agencies. His website is called mediacapitalventures.com, and David has been on a recent journey of scaling, growing a company, hiring, getting people trained, getting people led, empowered, everything that goes with that. So David is going to tell us about what he's gone through, what he struggled with, what we should know, and so much more. David, glad to see you again.
So nice to be with you, Robert, and thank you for that. That intro is a really nice setup because it does describe all of what I'm encountering now, in this journey. And it's very much a process. It's not a destination, although, we think, okay, maybe there's a business exit at the end of all of this that we're building and doing, but we have to be enjoying the now of it all too. And I think for the most part, I am. I'll have days where I have self-doubt like any entrepreneur might. And, I'm a slightly older guy to be, quote, in a 5-year-old startup. But all of that aside, I think that on our last episode, we talked a little bit about Audivita Studios, which is a company that produces audiobooks and podcasts. So we have two basic business lines, and that's been growing like gangbusters just because of the growth, as you know, the growth in podcasting and also the audio at large, which includes the audiobook product and the delivery of those products into the market. So we work with publishers and authors to help them get their audiobook produced. And then we also work with really any kind of entity, which is challenging too, because you could argue that almost anyone could have a podcast, but it's a very broad scope of types of businesses that we produce podcasts for and then monetize them when the audience numbers are large enough. So about a year ago, I had a desire. I've always had the desire to grow this company, and we continue to grow the core business. But I wanted to create a larger organization with the idea that we would grow by acquisition, and this will appeal to the entrepreneurs out there. So I created a new company called Media Capital Ventures. It will eventually become a Delaware C corporation, and with the idea that we would acquire other production companies, other tangential businesses that work synergistically with the work we do at Audivita, and grow that way. So so I went through a cycle of trying to raise money, and we weren't successful at raising money. But what we did was about 3 or 4 months ago, I got my team and I got together, and I've got some smart people on my team that have been with the likes of CNN and in media and Time Warner, and a gentleman who's in Europe who's been advising me and is now a partner of ours in this endeavor. And we determined that we would go out to market and really look for companies that want to own maybe smaller boutique production companies and the like, similar to an acquisition strategy, but we would use equity in the entire corporation to make acquisitions, or partial acquisitions. So so a small business like yours would own a smaller piece of a larger company, and maybe we can grow this to 10 or 15 million over a 5 or 7 year period. So that's the current operating model we're going out with. And so I'm now on basically a tour of talking to businesses that may or may not be interested in scaling this with us, diversifying their own interests, because now they own a smaller piece of a larger pie, and also taking advantage of the shared resources that we might be able to offer through this platform. Things like accounting and HR and payroll and even the sales functionality. Sales drives everything, regardless of the business you're in. I'm really of the mind that, so I'm investing a lot in sales right now in the way I'm thinking about this. So we have multiple brands that we're developing. Some of them are extension of Audivita's podcast business. Some of them are an extension of what we're involved with publishing and working on audiobooks. Some of them are involved with, so I'm talking to companies that are involved with digital marketing. They might be social media, specialized companies. And I'm also, importantly, and this will be interesting, is around this idea of wanting to build a sales engine for MCVI, which is my acronym for Media Capital Ventures Incorporated. However many companies we end up getting interested in pulling into the structure of MCVI, we want to support the growth of these companies, and that's one of the shared resources, with a centralized sales model. So I've been talking to a lot of companies, for example, that use AI to go out to LinkedIn, to harvest relationships and turn them into meetings, and then at the bottom of the funnel, we hope that they will actually come in and do a project with us. And so I've been going through and talking to a lot of different companies that are using AI, and all in various different ways. Some use some AI, but they're more human in the way they approach. So in other words, the initial outreach is an AI messaging, let's say on LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, and then it turns into an actual human talking to them at some point. That would be a human that we hire on our team. So it's like this upper layer of automation and then down to human level. So other companies I'm talking to, they're more robust and deeper. Multiple messages that are using AI to target the right people, first of all, from the list perspective. And then once the conversations are starting to happen, they're actually pulling information about the person that we're talking to on LinkedIn or Navigator, and they're crafting emails that relate to them in a very sort of business personal way. So, oh, this project you're working on, AI will know about that. It'll pull it into the email, and you can prompt it to say, I want my first message to be very conversational, and then let's move into a little bit of this. So you're providing some source material. It's pulling in information about the person you're talking to, and it's all being done through a bot. You can correct it. You can check it before it goes out, so there aren't any hallucinations that could be, get you into trouble. But it's so various degrees of AI to target your audience and also craft the messaging so that it resonates for them.
So
It's
you figured
fascinating.
out it is, and you figured out so much. And even the way you describe some of this, it's like, you and I both, we get people on our podcast. We talk about to people from different industries, and it's exciting when there's the people that have like the franchises, right? There's even like,
Right.
like garage door repair franchises, gardening franchises. They figured out
Right.
the recipe, the secret sauce. They figured out the sales system. They figured out a lot of the
Right.
marketing, and they say, hey,
That's
why
right.
would you start from scratch? You can kind of shortcut like 5 years or more and just hit the ground running. And then what you're also speaking to as far as the sales piece, like you're kind of, I've never heard it kind of encapsulated in that way before. And like, I don't know about you, but 5 years ago, I started taking LinkedIn seriously, and it's really grown up these last few years, hasn't it? Like people
Yeah.
have filled in so much, and you can have a conversation with someone and like a minute or two before, look on their LinkedIn, post, likes, job titles, skills, etc., and just like have a really good profile with them. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
with AI, then there's the problem of like, well, will it be a bunch of spam? Will it be a bunch of garbage? And you're saying, well,
Yeah.
you customize it because on that, when you first get people coming in your funnel, there might be thousands of just like before you get a conversation. So use the AI to customize and not spam to then tee up an employee to then have like a warmer conversation and get it to a point where you know what their needs are, you know where they're frustrated, you know their language, you have this conversation, you see if it's a good
That's right.
fit, you've given them the solution. It's a exciting time to be alive, but also fast paced and a lot of tools. And I imagine a lot of ways to go wrong. So when you have these conversations and you say, well, I figured out all this LinkedIn AI stuff, like what do you
Yeah.
see people
Okay.
doing incorrectly that just makes you angry?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know that it makes me angry, but I'll describe sort of what I've encountered so far. So on the spectrum of these AI vendors that help you with sales and, moving the funnel down to the call, um, there are companies that are really, again, it's a spectrum of I'm all in on AI and I'm not even thinking about humans. So to the point where you can create robotic or bot avatars on LinkedIn, have multiple avatars. These are not humans that are reaching out on their own, almost like an agentic AI kind of application, and and doing the work simultaneously, multi-channel. So it sounds sexy to think, oh, I've got multiple avatars on LinkedIn representing my company, trying to get meetings for my team. But it feels dangerous to me too. LinkedIn is they're smart. And for any of us who have been around it a lot, if you send too many messages that people don't respond to, you can get shut down. And it's the classic example of, you're so dependent on a source of clientele and prospecting that you don't control. It's a dangerous game. And so I'm hesitant to walk into a world where it's all about bots all the time, in terms of an outbound strategy. So at the end of the day, it feels like it's going to be some kind of what I'll call a healthy blend between some amount of AI along the lines of what you just iterated beautifully, which was this targeting and customization of messaging to a place where we're actually doing the responses as a human, and then a call happens, as opposed to all AI through the entire process until there's a meeting. So those are the sorts of things I'm sorting out. What do I want to staff for from a human perspective? Because we're a very high touch organization. We're not a click to buy, send a lead to a landing page, and it's a SaaS model, and you've subscribed. We're very projecty, hard to scale, and all of that. But that's who we are as Audivita anyway. So for the type of product we sell, we really do need to have an engaging conversation, and they have to like us. They have to feel like we get them, and they have to feel like we understand the book they wrote or the messaging they're trying to get out to market with their podcast, and that requires real human connection. So all of this, trying to sort it out, has been very interesting. I've talked to probably half a dozen companies. I've got my list down to a couple. I'm not going to mention any names now. Even if I could remember them all, I wouldn't want to mention them because I'm still in the midst of that discussion. But with several of them, but it's been a very interesting process. I also yesterday had a very interesting conversation with a voice tech company that uses agentic, and they do outbound sales calls using phone with robots, with bots. So it's I guess it's similar, except that it's voice on a phone instead of a message on LinkedIn or email. So it's another channel. And in our multiple brands that we have, I'm thinking about, well, is there an opportunity to test that and to see, I had a conversation, isn't there a problem with latency? Like the bot will say something, the person will respond. And we got into this conversation about how it thinks. It knows what the emotional content is of the recipient of the call. It can actually calibrate the speed that it's answering questions that may be asked. It's not perfect. There was all of this wrapped into this half-hour conversation with this guy, but I got interested enough to at least test it and to see, So I may do a small contained test with agentic robots calling people. It's also, and we all have experienced the inbound, call center version of this, where you call your bank and there's somebody pre-verifying you, doing some of the routine stuff that doesn't involve an actual conversation. I think in the call center business they call that an IVR, where it's the first line of, they want to minimize people being on phones with clients, so they try to automate as much of it as they can. I mean, as a business model, that's very intriguing to me. Whether I can apply it to my own business, I'm not sure. But anyway, that was an interesting little detour in our conversation about how we do sales and how AI may be a part of it.
Oh yeah, and you'll have this upcoming test, and you have to let us know how it goes, and that makes it less scary, right? Because you're not being left behind. You're not throwing away a big chunk of your business. You're saying, well, let me just run this experiment and see if the technology is there yet, or if I'm using it properly.
Right.
Because, and I think you're pointing out like the value in podcasts existing and listening to conversations, because I think we need to get these ideas like in our head repeatedly. So that way we kind of get our heads wrapped around the agentic AI, the phone bot. So that way we can be one of the early adopters and use it before everyone else uses it, and then it's too late. And so you mentioned here about how like, AI won't replace everything, right? And the humans are important. And my understanding is that you've become highly skilled at managing and leading and growing people. So can you tell us about that? Like, what have you been figuring out lately as far as the people?
Yeah, we move from, robotic and AI to the human chemistry of humans. So one of the miraculous things that happened, and forgive me if I mentioned this when we had our earlier episode, is after I had worked doing podcast and audiobook production all by myself, alone as a solopreneur, coming out of the music business and then trying to reinvent myself. There were a few years where I was just doing it all myself. And then eventually I got so busy that I needed to start to bring people in. And for reasons I can't entirely explain, the perfect team came together for Audivita. It started with, she was my VA originally, and we had sort of a partial agreement. And then she raised her hand and said, "Hey, I want to work with you full time. I love this business and I like working with you." And then Erica, she helped us create the systems as a VA and as a systems designer of systematic and processes. She was able to design the systems to help us run the business at a higher scale than I was able to do alone. So then that took it up to to another level. And then simultaneously, a couple of other members of our core team came in, the Fab Five, as we like to call ourselves. And it was so serendipitous and miraculous that it's really hard to document exactly why it worked that way. We didn't go out and I didn't interview multiple people for the positions. It just all came together. And oddly, they're all here physically in Albuquerque. We now have 2 employees that are outside of Albuquerque, but we're a virtual company anyway. So it's kind of a non-event. But so I've asked myself, how is it that this team operates so well together without really going through the process of hiring selectively? And I don't know that I have the answer, but I highly recommend it if you can achieve it. We have, 5 people that share values in terms of the quality of the work we do, the quality of the clients we want to serve, our mantra, which is connect your voice to the world, which is our tagline as well. And everything we do is about getting people's voice and connecting them to the world. But we think very differently amongst the 5 of us. So I think it's key. The key here is locate the people that share your values, but that think differently so that you can debate and have healthy arguments about the best or not so good way to do X, Y, or Z. It's been said 1,000 million times. As a founder, you don't want to surround yourself with people that always agree with you. You want to. So I come into a lot of meetings. I'm the last person to express my opinion, and I try. It's not always easy. I have a reminder here. Ask a lot of questions. Listen first and then ask questions. So I'm trying to learn how to be a better founder in that sense. And that is a practice. It's just probably never a destination that one reaches, but the more you can be genuinely curious, I think the more you're creating a context for people to perform at their highest level and really express their talents and greatness. In the music business, I had this too. I would write out a chart. When I started producing music, I would write out every note and I would try to control everything. And I would go into the studio, and the musicians were terrific with that because they understood I was a young composer in my 20s. I had a client in the studio and we were doing commercials for X, Y, and Z brand. And I found that I was writing a lot of specific things out and I was much more controlling. And as I got more mature, I began to loosen that a little bit and allow the musicians and the singers to own the process a little bit more. And just, in other words, creating the context. I knew I needed a 29 and a half second piece of music for this piece of film, but allowing the musicians within that box to have freedom and express themselves and have ownership. And a lot of that is analogous to running a company. I think you need to really let people breathe and have ownership. So the team building, that's been a process for me, is learning how to let go. So, hope that's helpful.
And it is, and it's a lifelong process. And I love how you connect it to the musician side of things, because I mean, like jazz is famous for the improvisation, and in music,
that's right.
You do need structure, do need organization, you do need math, you need the sheet music. But then if you're too controlling, you might as well be playing a tape. And so there's like the yin and the yang of it, right? There's the precision, but there's also the little bit of the fun, artistic playfulness. And you mentioned about, like, people always play lip service to this idea of like, oh, be the dumbest person in the room. But what does that mean? It means what you're saying, which is listen more than you speak. And it's probably really fundamental. But like the whole idea of like, podcasting, sales, having a conversation, it's just question and answer, right? Even like when we reconnected, I was like, wait, what did me and David talk about? I had a big long transcript. That's a mess. But I put it through ChatGPT and I said, break it down into the questions and answers. And it was just like a kind of, reduced down to the studs.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And as you're kind of explaining this to me, it's like when you look at good podcasters, like a Joe Rogan or something, right? They listen. They say, ooh, there's a thread. Let me kind of connect that and bring that over there, and then throw back to the guest, and then another question. And it's like, if we're more aware and deliberate about what makes it good and not too controlling, right? Because then you lose the magic, but you kind of have the awareness. Well, that's really great. And so as far as the yin and the yang, I like how you said, so there's make sure you have this team that has the same values as you, but then they think differently. And I always get kind of just tangled up mentally about this idea of values, because a lot of people say like, well, it's these collections of keywords, right? It's these terms. And I'm always thinking like, well, why does like Disney have these 6 values and Microsoft has these others. So can you unpack that a little bit as far as like your company's values? Like how do you
Yeah.
find those and
Yeah.
why those versus others?
Yeah. You know what? I have to pull up my website real quick just to remind me. I think they're on here. Let me see if I can find it. About us.
Oh no, they're not memorized?
Right? You'd think.
Or
I
like
know, right?
next to the computer on a
So here
post-it
they
note?
are.
All right.
Oh, wait, I got to turn off our auto play thing. So on our About Us page, it says our core values. We are future oriented with a long-term view. In all honesty, I stole that from Jeff Bezos, but we produced a book. I actually recorded this one myself. It was before I had a team, by an author that wrote a book called The Bezos Letters. And it's a wonderful book. What he does is he took 14, I think it was 14 of the Bezos stakeholder letters, and he distilled them down to the essence of them. And so some of, I've learned a little bit from Jeff and how he built his company. We are client obsessed in every way. That was another one right out of his book. So what does that mean? I mean, occasionally we've had clients that we had to fire because they didn't share our values. So just to be clear, that's a thing, and so, we need to be ready to, if they're not a fit for us, to be able to say, look, it's not a fit. We're not going to be able to work with you because you don't treat us a certain way, or you don't listen, or some other issue. So, but aside from the rejection of certain clients, and that's very rare, most of the people that are attracted to us, we enjoy working with. Let me be clear about that. But client obsessed means this is all about making sure that they're happy. And so sometimes that means it's a trade-off sometimes, where there may be a discrepancy about a certain aspect of the service that we provided. Just because we dropped a ball, we're humans, something happens, and we've had projects go sideways because we use a lot of freelancers, and sometimes schedules get messy, and we've had to explain, look, we've got a situation, we're sorry there's a little delay in your project. What can we do to make it right? It's just about you see this in restaurants and any kind of consumer brands as well. You want to make sure they walk away happy, because if they walk away happy, they're going to tell 10 people about how wonderful we were. Even though it went a little sideways, we made it right. That you can't, you can't buy that kind of PR. If they walk away unhappy, they might tell 10 or 15 people the exact reverse story. I would never work with these guys again. They were terrible to work with. They didn't listen, and it was all about them, and I'm the client, aren't I? So that kind of thought. We just want to be obsessed with our clients. We bring an inspired team approach to everything we do. So this is about the cohesive team that we bring. The more internal speaks to the functionality of our team and how we work together to support each other. We thrive in a culture of creativity, innovation, and continuous improvement. So it's a process, not a destination. Back to Bezos, he says every day is day one. I like that a lot. I think, just start from the basics. Where we, I've said it. There it is. We want to have the freedom to experiment and create successful failures as well. So, that we could unpack that a little more, but basically, I don't want people to feel like we can't try things. And I demonstrate that every day, because I'll go out there and I'll, like this robot voice thing I'm talking about, I like trying things and seeing what the results of them are. So I'm pretty fearless about that. And I want people on the team to feel like, yes, you can go ahead and try that. And if it doesn't work, we're not going to reprimand you. We're going to use it as an opportunity to learn and discover it. And really help feed our continuous improvement, which is the other value. We do have philanthropy. We donate a little bit to a group that helps people wipe out their medical debt. So we do that with a nonprofit, and then we try to have fun with what we do. Everything we do, we want to have fun. If there's a point where it's just not fun anymore, time out. We need to look at that. So those are the values as are currently on our website.
Well, very exciting, and I can definitely get the Jeff Bezos-ness from it. Where there's no limit to, if anyone looked into all the sub companies or all the projects Amazon has created. They tried to do Amazon Health once, and it was a huge failure. But it was just like, okay, we tried, we'll move on to something else. And S3 and SES, they're huge successes, right? And the average Joe doesn't know, like you can tie into an Amazon API right now and like run any Alexa commands. You can do any kind of like
Right.
transcription, image identification. It's just find the API and plug into it. And so,
Right.
and I think that's a result of them just like trying different projects and having fun and like running these sorts of experiments. And so but I love this idea of like knowing what your values are as a way to sort of stick to your guns, right? Because it draws some boundaries. And we've all been in situations in
Right.
business and personal life where we've had to end relationships of different kinds. And we're like, well, am I sure I want to do that? You feel guilty afterwards. You play the what if game. But if you say, here are my values, and this
Right.
person's just not sticking to them, and here's all this kind of concrete evidence, like that's, I wish them well, but I don't want them in my life anymore. It's so
Right.
helpful in a lot of different ways. And so, we could talk for hours about some of this stuff, but it's podcasting. We like to give them a taste and leave them wanting more. So in our last couple of minutes here, I want to make sure that we cover the bases, especially if there's like a missing, hidden, invisible question that I should be asking you that I'm not asking you. So what comes to mind here, David? Is there something that you just wish I
So,
would ask you?
yeah, something came to mind. I don't know how I would phrase it as a question, but it's an observation I made. So maybe you could reverse engineer the question. The answer is, sounds like Jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's one thing to grow a business from zero to a certain level, the entrepreneurial journey, and we still have a very entrepreneurial culture. And I want to preserve that entrepreneurial culture. And at the same time, I do have aspirations to grow a larger organization from a revenue perspective. And this is why I created MCVI, to help facilitate that while still preserving the entrepreneurial nature of Audivita Studios. We'll see how it plays out. But I like this idea of boutique companies within a larger superstructure so that they can enjoy the larger enterprise type of capitalization and opportunities that come with that, but still preserving their entrepreneurial culture. So that's the balancing act. I don't know how to ask that question, but it's just something that's in my mind I wanted to share. It does take a very different approach to get from zero to a million and then, to scale from there. And so I'm exploring how exactly to do that. So.
And I'm not sure what the question is either, but it's fascinating to think about of what size A were you starting, what size B were you going, what game are you playing, what's the big picture, who do you need help from
Yeah,
along the way?
yeah. And Robert, just to close, I want to say that I'm completely open to the possibility. You have to hold what's the ambiguity. I think that's a test to holding opposite ideas. This may not work the way I'm imagining it. It may work something different. It may not work at all. I'm very happy with the Audivita business and the way we do what we do, and we can continue to grow that as well. Call this an experiment. So I'll leave you there.
All right, well, we'll find out how that works out. And I just love how
Thank you,
you
Rob.
think these things through. A lot of people
Thank you,
don't,
man.
right? I have a LinkedIn friend the other day who said like
Yeah.
70% of businesses she spoke to didn't have an org chart. What? Just doodle it around, write it down. And so there's these fundamental kind of businessy things that a lot of people maybe skip over, or they don't know
Yeah.
what they don't know. And they
Right.
need guidance from someone like you, either from like the thought leadership, seeing your content, or partnering with you. And so how can someone do that? How does somebody know if they're someone who can help the mission of Media Capital Ventures? What's the next step here?
Oh, okay. Well, you could reach out to me at DWolf, DWOLF at mediacapitalventures.com. That website domain tells you a lot. The site was originally designed for a capital raise, in other words, money. So we haven't completely modified the site. We've edited my pitch video. You'll see a pitch video there. But really what we're looking for are companies that want to join, that are of a certain size, and we can get into those conversations, that wanted to join what we're doing and that can synergistically work within the ecosystem of multiple media companies, whether they're in marketing, technology, publishing, production, or even well, there it is. Those are really the main verticals. So we're looking for companies that can kind of operate in this ecosystem. That's the idea there.
Okay, so if
Feel free to
someone,
reach out to me
yeah.
if you have questions or you just want to talk about it. Yeah.
All right. So if you have questions, you want to talk about it, you're in one of those verticals, that's dwolf at mediacapitalventures.com. And
That's it.
David has shared some really great ideas here. And if you say, man, like I'd love to be part of this 21st century portfolio of entertainment and media companies that create and deliver content to the world, then get on that seat of the rocket ship. And it's the time now, David, for the part of the show where we try to stump you a little bit. We try to put you on the spot, and we ask about a fun quote or lesson that has helped you in business or life that you can pass on to us. So what comes to mind for a fun quote or lesson?
Okay. 2 words. Let go. I practice meditation. And I've been about 8 years into practice of TM twice a day. And what that has done for me is it allows me to have use Ray Dalio's word, equanimity. I can observe the world without the impulse to react to what's coming at me in a beautiful way. And this is part of, I think, why our team works the way they do and the way I've been able to attract the right people. It's this practice of stilling the mind. So I don't know if I exactly conform to your format there, but I would say I highly recommend some type of meditative practice.
I completely agree that it's important to have different settings for yourself, different modes. There is time to take
Yeah,
action. There is time to be hyper and loud, but other times just sit. They say, what's the saying? Don't
right.
just do something, sit there. So there's definitely value in that
That's a good
of,
one.
yeah,
Ooh,
I've been seeing it all around. So you sit and like kind of let the thoughts process and everything, and there's
yeah.
many benefits to the mindfulness, the meditation, the equanimity. So look into that as well as looking into mediacapitalventures.com. Mr. David Wolf, great catching up, and I feel like we fit in like 4 podcasts in one. I love it.
I know we really packed it in, Robert. Thanks for having me. Enjoy.